Hey guys, it's been way too long since I've made a video, and I stumbled upon a game recently that's right up my alley. Today, we take a look at Effie. Growing up, and even to this day, my favorite type of game has always been a 3D platformer. There's something so sweet about a world full of charming characters and adventure. So when I heard that Inverge Studio had made a game inspired by the likes of Ratchet & Clank, A Hat in Time, Yooka-Laylee, and the like, I was beyond excited. Effie's story follows our hero Galland, a man who was born gifted with great strength but was extremely lazy. A woman came to Galland looking for help with her wagon that had flipped over, but Galland lied to her, insisting there was nothing he could do about it. That woman ended up being a powerful witch, who used dark magic to turn Galland into an old man. In order to regain his youth, Galland had to prove to the ancient elders that he was pure of heart. He would do this by exploring the red plains of Hablan, seeking out gems of evil, armed with a magical shield that's said to bond to those with a pure heart. Now right off the bat, let me point out that the stylized world of Hablan is gorgeous, and that shield surfing around is incredibly fun. But while having a good hub is important, there are two key points that every 3D platformer has to do well in order to stand on its own 2 feet. Interesting worlds and good movement. I'm super happy to say that in the movement category, Effie scores wonderfully. You have a traditional double jump, and shortly into the game you get a dash. You can also use Galland's 3-hit light attack combo to extend his time in the air. Combining these 3 things, you can pull off some very satisfying jumps. The controls are responsive and really hit the nail on the head in terms of what I want from a 3D platformer. As for the worlds, each one has a decently unique concept, and they all look fantastic. The music for each of these areas is great too, and you can tell the composer put a lot of time and effort into capturing the essence of the areas. Well, now we know that Effie has good worlds and great movement, but while I consider those the most important aspects of a 3D platformer, they're certainly not the only important aspects. The gameplay in Effie breaks down into 3 categories: platforming, puzzles, and combat. The platforming sections can be very satisfying thanks to the movement of the game. However, sometimes it does feel like the developers weren't expecting the use of both the dash and 3-hit combo. Which isn't necessarily a big deal, but can make some of the platforming feel far too easy. I don't think I found a single spot in the game where using this technique was necessary, which mostly made it feel like a safety net. But when you give the players such an awesome set of skills, you have to expect them to try and use all of them to the best of their ability. There's also a surprisingly low amount of things that can kill you in one hit. I know that sounds silly, but it really does add to making the game a bit too easy. It wasn't until these magma vent things that I actually died at all, because prior to that, nothing really posed a threat. If you missed a jump, usually that just means you have to dash back to the beginning real quick. So with the exception of not being quite as difficult as I would have hoped, the platforming feels great and is definitely Effie's strongest point. Next we have the puzzles, and given that it's a platforming game, there aren't really a ton of them to begin with, but I hate to say that the variety is lacking even for that standard. You'll have about 5 puzzles that are all pull the levers in the correct order. And by the 5th one, I wasn't even trying to solve them anymore. They're easy enough that you can actually just brute force them by guess and checking. You do get the occasional puzzle that really makes you think, and while they might be far and few between, they help add to Effie's variety in gameplay. And lastly, the combat. I hate to say it, I really do, but the combat in Effie is so incredibly flawed. It is absolutely the weakest part of this game, and here's why. Let's start from the first world, before you have any fancy abilities. Effie uses an auto-target system similar to that of the Arkham games. You've got both a light attack and strong attack combo, and lastly you have your trusty shield. Immediately upon getting into combat, you run into the first major issue. The shield is almost never worth using. When an enemy is defeated, they drop health and shield energy to Galland. Every single time. By spamming nothing but light attack and aiming in the general direction of your enemies, you will out-heal any damage you take, and it really is a shame. Initially when playing, it felt like there was some strategy. These ghost enemies, straight from Luigi's Mansion 3, have different attacks based on their colors. It seemed best to shield the orange ones while focusing the purple ones first. That is, until I realized that it really doesn't matter at all. Just keep mashing that X button. Eventually, we're introduced to a new enemy type. This guy is huge, cool looking, and intimidating. He even has a new ground smash attack. And light attacks don't even work on him. This is great variety, Until once again you realize that he gets stun locked by the heavy attack combo. The worst part of all of this is that the enemy variety isn't even bad. It just ends up not mattering when mashing X is the most efficient way of defeating enemies. Now you may be asking, what about later in the game when you get new fighting abilities? And unfortunately, I have to tell you that it gets worse. Eventually, you get the ability to throw your shield around you in a circular motion. This move will kill almost every enemy in one hit. It costs shield energy, so you'd think I wouldn't be able to spam it, but we run back into our original issue. When defeating an enemy, you regain almost all of your health and shield energy. Here's a clip of a so-called ambush that I have to fight. It kinda speaks for itself.
An ambush. It was time to fight again.
My experience with Effie was a good one. I know I've sounded pretty negative about it, but that doesn't mean I had a bad time. The game is pretty short, taking me just under 4 hours to beat while collecting most things, although not everything. Surfing around on the shield is an absolute treat, the voice acting of Galland is funny and charming, and the platforming is exactly what it should be. Fun. Perhaps just give it a touch more polish, a bit more bug testing, and a few changes to the combat system, and you have yourself an A+ 3D platformer. Fingers crossed we get just that in Effie 2. Alright guys, that is it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed it, and as always, have a wonderful rest of your day.